This is chapter number 5, Pastoralists in the Modern World. So pastoralists, who are they? What happened to them in the modern world? This is the picture showing sheep grazing on the bugyals of eastern Garhwal. Garhwal is a region in Uttarakhand in India. So there are two regions basically in Uttarakhand, Kumaon and Garhwal. So this area of where these sheep can graze, these are vast natural pastures on the high mountains that are known as bugyals, about 12,000 feet. Here in this discussion, we are going to talk about nomadic pastoralists. Those pastoralists who own these animals and they are nomadic. That means they move. They don't live in one place. They move from one region, one area to another for their livelihood. You might have seen various pastoralists having goats, sheep, camel and cattle. So where they are going, from where they are coming, we need to understand this and what were their past. First of all, we always see that when we talk about history, we talk about agriculture, we talk about industry, we talk about emperors, the war, etc. But we don't talk about pastoralists, because these are also, their lives matter to everyone. Right? So that is why we need them in our history to understand what their life were. So we will divide this discussion into two parts. First, we'll talk about the pastoral societies of India and then Africa. So the basic thing is the colonial rule, how they impacted the lives of the nomadics, the pastoralists in India and Africa, and how they coped up with the changing pattern of colonialism. This we are going to learn. So we'll talk about India in the first part, the pastoral nomads and their movements. Before that, let me tell you, to understand more, let me show you a map. If you see, this map shows or sums up the discussion, and that is this one. Okay. So we'll start with the discussion of Gujar Bakarwals. This is the Jammu and Kashmir region of or state of India. Then we'll come to Himachal Pradesh, that is Gaddis. Then we'll go to the Bhotiyas and Gujars of Uttarakhand area. And then these central India, we have Banjaras. Then in the Rajasthan and Gujarat, we have Raikas and this Maldharis. If we go down south, we have Dhangars and Kurmas, Kurbas and Golas. We also have in the northeastern state Monpas. So whenever I talk about or we discuss about these, you must understand and must recall that these are the location which we are talking about. These are the pastoralists in India. So let us start our discussion with the, as I said, with the Gujar Bakarwals. So even today we find these Gujar Bakarwals in you can say vast majority in Jammu and Kashmir. They are basically the herders of goat and sheep. So they migrated according to the summer and winter. And what happens, because they have come from some other place, because this area they have started living. Now when the high mountains are covered with snow, that is Jammu and Kashmir region. One is Jammu region, one is Kashmir region. Kashmir region is quite cold, so the high mountains are covered with snow. So they come down to the Shivalik range. Let us understand they come to the region which is near Jammu region. You can understand like this. And this dry scrub forest, these are very good for the pasture for their herds. And by the end of April, now they march towards the northern part, their summer grazing ground. And in between, several households came together for this journey. that means a kind of small village moves, forming a kafila. Kafila means many people moving together. They cross the Pir Panjal and they enter the valley of Kashmir. And once the onset of summer comes, that is, the snow melts and the mountainsides are lush green, and there are different bright kind of grasses with rich nutritious forage for their herds. By the end of the September, these bakarwals, they move again. Now they do the downward journey back to their winter base. And let me show you how they actually do. See, if this is the mountain area, they are grazing here, their herds. Now if this is filled with say a lot of snow, they need to come down. So this is how this Kashmir region, they generally go in the summers, but in the winter season they come down to the Shivalik region. So this is how, according to the winter and summer, they move along, or you can say they go back and forth. In the same way, the Gaddis are also the shepherds of Himachal Pradesh. They also do the seasonal movement. By April, they move north and spend this summer in Lahore and Spiti. That is, they too spend their winter in the low hills of Shivalik range as the Bakarwals are doing. And they move north, and sometime in the summer they stay at Lahore and Spiti. Now, when the snow melts and the high passes are clear, they again move on to higher mountains. So this is the one very, you can say, default picture of a Gujar mandap on the high mountains in center Garhwal. Now, one thing need to be mentioned here, that the buffaloes cannot climb this much. So they always have these small ones like the goats and sheep. So we were talking about Gaddis. They go to these mountain meadows, and by September they begin their return movement. While coming back also and while going up also, they stay at the villages of Lahore and Spiti. Okay, so this is how they move. Again, according to the different summer and winter season, they move back and forth. We have certain new words coming, which is Bhabar and Bugyal. Bhabar is a dry forested area below the foothills of Garhwal and Kumaon. As I said, Garhwal and Kumaon is in Uttarakhand, two regions. Bugyal means vast meadows in the high mountains. If you see this picture, this is about Gaddis. So the Gaddis, they are waiting for shearing to begin, shearing of these fur. Now let us come to the region which is called as Uttarakhand, Garhwal and Kumaon region. Gujar cattle herders came down to the dry forest of the Babbar in the winter, and they went up to high meadows, that is Bugyals, in summer. And they were originally from Jammu, but they came here and now they are settled. So this pattern is, if you see the pattern which is common, is the movement between summer and winter of the Himalayas, including the Bhotiyas, Sherpas and Kinnoris also do that. So they adjust themselves, adjust their movement and adjust their herd movement according to the available pastures in different places in different seasons. When one is exhausted, unusable, they move to the other place. So this continuous movement also make the pastures to recover, allow them to recover and prevent their overuse. This is a picture of Gaddis sheep being reared. And these are not the only places where we find this pastoralist. In the Indian region, plateaus and plains and deserts of India, there are various other pastoralists. In the Maharashtra region, the Dhangars are important pastoral communities. So if I can tell you the number, in the early 20th century, their population were 4,67,000. And most of them were shepherds, but some of them also were weavers, blanket weavers, and they have buffaloes also. So they stayed at the central plateau of Maharashtra during the monsoon, and this was a semi-arid region with low rainfall and poor soil, and they get thorny scrub, and nothing but dry crops like the bajra can be sown here. In the monsoon, now this tract become a vast grazing ground for the dhangar flocks. By the October, the dhangars harvest their bajra and they move towards the west, and they reach the Konkan about a month of March, that is moving along. So this is the picture of Raika. We'll talk about them just now. Raika camel grazing on the Thar desert in western Rajasthan. We'll come to this in a short while. But these people, Kadhangar, from the plateau of this Maharashtra, now they move towards Konkan. At this place, they find high rainfall and soil rich. So here the shepherds in Karnataka, if you see the monsoon conditions, if you see, we just talked about this. So these movement of these different region, that is not the mountain, here the shepherds, they are actually welcomed because they move to Konkan, and they are actually welcome. Why? Because at this time we have two harvests, Kharif and Rabi. So Kharif is the autumn crop, usually harvested between September and October, and Rabi is the spring crop, usually harvested after March. So when they come here, these herders, the Kharif harvest was cut at this time, the field had to be fertilized, and these fields are to be made ready for the next harvest, that is the Rabi harvest. So dhangar flocks which are coming manure the field, and they fed the stubble. What is the stubble? The lower end of grain stalks left in the ground after harvesting. And these Konkani peasants, they also give supplies of rice to these people, that is the dhangars. So this is how the things goes, that is, they move from their place to Konkan and back because of the various seasonal changes. Because the sheep cannot live or tolerate the monsoon's conditions, so they have to move back. When we come to another place, that is Karnataka and Andhra Pradesh, the dry central plateau was covered with stone and grass, inhabited by cattle, goat and sheep herders. The Golas, one of the community, the pastoral community, herded cattle here. Then the Kurumas and Kurubas, they also reared sheep and goats, and they also sold the woven blankets. So they would live near the woods, cultivated small patch of land, engaged in a variety of petty trades also. So here, if you see, there is a difference. The mountain pastoralists, they move in the rhythm with respect to cold and snow. But this region which we are just talking about, that is the central and the south region, the pastoralists move according to monsoon and dry season, right? And it depends on what herds they have, because if they have buffaloes really like the swampy wet conditions, but the sheep doesn't. If we come to the central region, Banjaras, they're also well-known group of graziers. You can find them in Uttar Pradesh, Punjab, Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh and Maharashtra. They also move long distance, they sell plough cattle, and they do different type of exchange of grain and fodder, these Banjaras. If you see, this is a camel herder in this settlement. So what happens here in the deserts of Rajasthan, the rainfall in this region is uncertain and very small, less, that is meager. Once the cultivated land is there, means they harvest, it actually fluctuated every year. Over vast stretches, you cannot grow any crop. So the Raikas, they combine cultivation with, that is, they do cultivation also and they do pastoralism also. in the monsoon season, the Raikas of Barmer, Jaisalpur, Jodhpur and Bikaner, they stay at their home, where the pastures are available. But by October, when the season is, or the grazing is dry and exhausted, they now move to that place where they find good pastures and water. And they again come back, return to their own place in the next monsoon. One group of Raika, which is known as Maru, that is desert Raika, they herd camel, and another group reared sheep and goats. So some march with camels, some go with sheep and goat, these Raikas. If you see, you can have a look of them. This is a camel fair at Balotra in western Rajasthan. So here Raikas, they sell these camels, they show different type of activities, right? They show you their expertise in the camels. And here is a camel fair at Pushkar, very famous, internationally acclaimed camel fair. So what we see here is that the movement of pastoral groups or life of pastoral groups depend on various factors. They judge, that is how long they need to stay at one place, at what condition, in which season, and according to that, with proper judgment and judicious decision, they move from here and there in order to get a proper pasture and the exchange or trade they do. So that is, there are different activities they combine: cultivation, trade and herding, in order to get their livelihood. But now, how this pastoralism in India at that time changed when the colonial people came. In the colonial rule, what happened? So these are certain picture of the Maru, Raika. People are talking about their past. Here we have the Maldhari herders moving in search of various pastures. This is the area of Rann of Kutch. So we talked about how these different pastoralists of different regions, they move according to different seasons, according to different pasture opening, and where they are welcome, where they are not. Now, under the colonial rule, what happened? The things changed. Their grazing ground shrank. Their movements were stopped. Revenue they had to pay was increased. And their agricultural stock declined, and their trade and craft were adversely affected. But how did this happen? First of all, the colonial state, they want to transform all the grazing land into cultivated farms. That is, in order to grow something, because they want sources for revenue. Land revenue was one of the main sources of the colonial rule. So what they can do is they can just expand the cultivation area in order to get more revenue. And they wanted to produce jute, cotton, wheat and other agriculture produce so that they can be exported to England. Right? For them, those areas, those land which are not cultivated, they are actually unproductive because they are not giving them any revenue. They are not getting any agriculture product also from there. So it is wasteland for them. And by wasteland, from the mid-19th century, the wasteland rules were enacted in different parts of the country. And most of the areas were taken over and given to selected individuals. And these individuals were granted proper concessions, and they were given encouragement to settle these lands. Some were made headmen of the villages. In most areas, the land taken over by actual grazing tracts, which were used by whom? By pastoralists. So when the cultivation area increases, there is a decrease of pasture and there is a problem for the pastoralists. The second problem or second thing was, by the mid-19th century, there were various forest acts which were actually imposed or enacted. And because of this, the commercially valuable timber like deodar and sal, these areas were declared reserved. Now the pastoralists cannot enter. These areas are protected. Previously, these areas were very good pasture for these people, that is the pastors. They move unrestricted. But now they can't come here, right? Because the colonial people or colonial official, they understand that the grazing, the herds are actually destroying the saplings, the young shoot of trees that germinated on the forest floor. So they need to stop. They prevented new trees from growing, these herders. So they wanted to stop them. So the Forest Act changed the lives of pastoralists. They were just stopped from entering. Very small areas were provided to them, and that was also properly regulated. They now need the permit to enter. There is a word which came, customary means, right, that people are used by custom and tradition. So that they wanted them to have the permit, that is the pastoralists need to have a permit. There is a proper timing for their entry and departure, and if they exceed that timing, then they will be fined, right? So now the area which they have is small. Everything is on the permit. They have to provide money for number of herds they have. The third thing was, the British official, they were very suspicious of the nomadic people. They believed on those people which are staying at one place, but those who are moving here and there, the British people or the colonial people, they don't like them, or you can say they are just considered as criminal. In fact, in 1871, colonial government, they passed the Criminal Tribes Act, and because of them, many communities of craftsmen, traders and pastoralists, they were classified now as a criminal tribe, right? So once this act came into picture of force, these communities that came under these criminal tribes, they were forcefully, whether they are just allowed or not allowed, but they were not allowed to move without a permit. The police is keeping a close watch on the so-called criminal tribes. And there was one more thing. To expand the revenue income, the colonial government looked for every possible source where they can put the tax. So they put the tax on land, canal water, salt, trade salt, even on the animals. Now the pastoralists, they were grazing the pasture, they have to give tax on the number of cattle they have, that is the tax per head, they have to give them. And in the decades between 1850 and 1880, the rights to collect tax were given to contractors. Now the contractors, these contractors, they would just take enough money from these poor pastoralists, right? Each of them was given a pass to enter a grazing tract. The cattle herder had to show the pass, they have to pay the tax, the number of cattle's heads he has to pay according to them. The tax is per cattle, that is, if he has 10 cattle, he has to pay X amount. If he has 100 cattle, he has to pay 10 times the amount. How did these changes actually affected the lives of pastoralists? Now, when the areas are cultivated fields, or most of the areas are now cultivated fields, the pasture land will decline. I'll show you. So this is the area where some ex-pastoralists would come. This is second area, third area. Now, if this land is taken over for cultivation by the authorities, only this small area is available for the pastoralists. So all three will come here, right? Now, because of this, the area of grazing becomes less. And as pasture lands, they disappear, most of them, means the stock or most of the pastoralists will come in the small area. And because once most of the cattle will graze here, this area will decline in a faster pace. So because the area is less, they are not being fed well, the camel or the sheep or the goat, any cattle would die. So because of this also, the cattle were diminished in the numbers, and these pastoralists, they faced a lot of problem. Now, how these pastoralists come up with certain solutions? So let us first see that, and then we'll go to the next part. They reacted. Some reduced the number of cattle because the taxation was on the number of cattle, right? And also the pastures were less now. There were not enough pastures to feed large numbers. Then others, they just tried to find out different areas. After 1947, if you say, this Raikas who were traditionally going to Sindh and graze their camel, they now, because of the partition of India and Pakistan, they could not go there. So they need to find new places. They are now finding they migrated to Haryana. Okay. After the harvest is cut, they move to Haryana, because this is the time these fields needs manure, that animal dung, or you can say the waste provides. And over the years, some rich pastoralists, they are just buying land, they are settling down, they are just giving up this nomadic life. They just don't want to go here and there. They took some other job. And some pastoralists, they borrow money from moneylenders, and at times they lose their cattle and sheep, and they become laborers. They work in small towns. But pastoralists, still we can find them, so they did survive. They did survive. And when pasture lands in one place was close to them, they changed the direction of their movement. They also reduced the size of the herd. They combined the pastoral activity with various other activity to earn something, for the income. They adapted themselves to the modern world, right? But most of the ecologists, they still believe that the mountains and the pastoralism, they are matched to each other. Pastoralism is still ecologically most viable form of life in these mountains. So this is how the new laws, the settlement patterns, and they force the pastoral communities to change their lives, right? So this is how they actually reacted with the changes that were forced on them. So this is about the discussion of the pastoral communities in India, and we saw of the different region, different part, what happened after the colonial rule. Now we'll go and discuss the African area, what happened to them and how did they reacted to the colonial rule or administration or different, you can say, regulations. Thank you so much.